Hey y'all, and welcome back to the latest episode of Code Brew. I'm Joe King, and I'm still not here with Luke Warren because he's still out traveling the world. And I'm here with Dee Cision instead. Dee Cision is a new guest. So she's here. We're going to talk about leadership today, and we're also going to talk about why she could possibly be the reason that Luke was allowed to leave the country.
I don't think I approve that. If I did, we're going to have to talk to somebody about that.
Rethink all your decisions.
Yes, because he didn't invite us, so
I know, right?
unfortunately.
Did I tell you that the first thing he did whenever he got to the Philippines was like go to the KFC drive-thru?
That checks out.
I can track his location for safety purposes, of course.
He needed a good warm meal.
And I was like, why are you at KFC in the Philippines? No. That totally tracks. But so you wanted to read our disclaimer though before we get going. Go for it.
All right. The views and opinions expressed on Code Brew are solely our own and do not represent the views of our employers, professional organizations, or any personal or professional affiliates. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered medical advice.
I meant to record you. Like, I can like keep playing it over and over.
Yes.
So like cut that out.
That's my airline stewardess voice.
It is your airline stewardess voice.
Yes.
I like it. So we're talking about leadership. We need to talk about you first. Like what, tell us about your background, your current role, and then let's talk about how you got into leadership in the first place.
Yeah, so I have been in nursing for 11 years this year as a registered nurse. I worked in the hospital prior to that while I was in nursing school and then did some volunteer work in the hospital in high school.
Candy striper?
They didn't call it that, but I did have a cute little polo and some khakis that I wore, and some white non-skid shoes.
It's not the same.
It's not the same. I would have preferred a little candy striping outfit. So started at this facility and started out on a cardiac intermediate unit caring for post-heart transplant, pre- and post-heart transplant patients after they left the cardiovascular intensive care unit. We also took care of congestive heart failure, pulmonary hypertension, and ventricular assist device patients, or VADs. So that's where I got my start and moved up and on from there. I had my bachelor's degree when I graduated. About 2 years into working, I said, let me go back to school. So I did that, went back, got my master's, and then moved into some other roles in the hospital from there. So I did a night shift. It was called night shift nurse supervisor, but really I was an educator or help with education and onboarding specifically for new grads on night shift. So, 5 o'clock.
That.
Yeah, 5 o'clock comes, nobody's here except for the night shift crew, so really needed some extra support, and did some kind of, looked at what things were needed on night shift specifically, so that was a really fun role, because night shift with my people, that's where I'd prefer to live and be, but day shift's a little bit better, easier on the lifestyle.
It is. I think I'm a nicer person, just in general, now that I work day shift, yeah.
From there, I became a house manager, which is the best job I ever had. And that was kind of that's how they trained me for the night shift role. They said, well, you need to learn everything. Let's put you as a house manager or orient with these people. So I did, and they're some of the best nurses in the hospital. They know so much. And so I got to do that for a couple of years and was still getting my master's at that time and then ended up transitioning into the nurse manager role when I was graduating with my master's. There was an open position. They said, do it interimly.
That's how they get you.
Maybe that's the phrase you never want to hear in the hospital. Do it interimly, and that's how they get you. So I did that, and then have managed multiple different areas in the hospital, both departments and units, and then moved into a director role. So my current title is Director of Clinical Support Services, which really encompasses a lot of the entities that assist with the departments and units. So I don't have any actual inpatient, outpatient units. I have float pool, transport, monitoring, journey to excellence, some things related to quality and outcomes and all things innovation. So
journey to excellence being the shared governance piece.
Shared governance, yes. Looking to be on that journey to achieve magnet recognition at some point.
Yeah.
And all those things. So
it's a whole episode. We may have to talk to you again about magnet.
Yes, let's talk about it as we move along the journey, what it means, what it doesn't mean.
Well, I think it's something that needs to be talked about probably. Something that we talk a lot about as nurses and So we could probably have a whole episode on that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely.
So any surprises that you encountered moving away from the bedside as far as like, do you miss the bedside? Like, I was just curious, like, do you miss doing direct patient care all the time or not?
Yeah, I think that definitely not getting to see patients. I mean, that's the reason that I think most people start into healthcare. It's definitely what drew me to healthcare, was the opportunity to make a difference in people's lives who were struggling and at their most vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
So not being able to see that connection, I think, is probably one of the hardest parts of it, because most of the time now, I mean, you can round on patients, but you get pulled away to other things. So most of the time you're only encountering patients either in the hallways or when you are having to go deal with an issue or a problem. So you don't get to do that day to day. And that's what I loved about the unit I worked on when I started, was because we really got to know those people. I mean, this was the only place that they could come. You know their families, you know their birthdays, you know they're in the hospital for weeks or months, or you're celebrating with them. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I loved about it. It's why I never wanted to work in the ICUs, because I wanted to talk to my patients.
Yeah.
Some people are like, I want them,
Well, I mean, I sometimes feel the same way, because I do more, my service is more towards the staff, to the staff. And when I do get involved with someone, it's usually whenever things have, deteriorated. And so I may not get the opportunity to talk. So I understand. I sometimes, and I was just curious if you're experiencing that as well, as I sometimes miss having those one-on-one, just normal interactions with patients as you take care of them. So, okay, so leadership and non-traditional paths. So I want to talk about what is nursing leadership really, and what does that mean to you?
So for me, nursing leadership, I mean, leaders are, I think we're going to get into this, but there's informal leaders, there's formal leaders. So in my role, I would consider that formal leadership. It's title driven. And so it's having the ability to make an impact in some way. But that comes from me having a title and having, some kind of authority. Then you have your informal leaders on the units who are just within the facility who have the ability to make an impact. And it's because people see them as leaders. They trust their knowledge. They trust them. And so, really it's making that impact and being able to have people who will follow you. Right. You're leading their following in some way.
And they're both equally as important.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can't move anything along if you don't have your informal leaders behind you as a formal leader.
Mm-hmm. No. So leadership is one of the things I thought about whenever I was getting ready for this episode. Is leadership is influence, right? You're saying you have to have the ability for people to follow you. And I think that is, you have to be able to inspire people to get along behind you. So I think that's really important. But you're right, there's the formal leadership that comes with a title. But you also still, even if you have a title, you have to have that ability to lead, that ability to inspire people, right? So you can be given a title, and we see people all the time who are not successful because they don't find that ability to gain followers,
Yeah, they don't know how to meet people where they're at and kind of connect with them.
Right.
I think that's, one of the things that it's very important to me is the difference between management and leadership. So there are a lot of people who have a title of manager.
Right.
So managing something is, to me, more the administrative stuff. You can check a box, you can do an audit, you can, count how many times somebody's been to work or not been to work, or that kind of stuff. But
put their schedule on the computer.
Yeah, that is administrative. That's managing stuff. But leading, to your point, is people who you're inspiring them to see a vision for good or bad, out in the world. different types of that.
Right.
But, people who you can do all of that, but you can also move and drive change. And that's the big thing with leadership. Because, a lot of times that is where people fail, because they think, but I'm checking all the boxes, I'm doing all the things. Well, you're managing stuff, but you're not inspiring anyone. Right. No one's behind you and your philosophy or what that looks like. You don't have a purpose.
Well, and you have to have a philosophy. I think part of it is establishing what that purpose is. What direction are you moving to? And to your point, is it's so important to find what your purpose is. Being a change maker is really important in healthcare. I think that's a huge thing, because it is ever changing, ever evolving to bring better outcomes for our patients. And so I think we all have to be change makers in some kind of way, to be involved in leadership from a healthcare perspective, especially from a nursing perspective. You have to be willing to accept change, find out what those changes need to be, educate yourself, you know, in evidence-based practice, and then look at ways that you can, bring about those changes. So, so another thing I want to talk about is how important it is at all levels. I mean, we can have leaders. I mean, obviously we have leaders in the C-suite, or they wouldn't have got to the point that they're at if they didn't have leadership abilities. But then we also have leaders who are brand new. You can have new grads, you can have people at all levels of an organization displaying leadership abilities. So,
yeah, I mean, new grads coming in, there's just different ways people carry themselves. Like, you can look at people and say, oh, I think they also have to have a drive to want to lead, because it's not that it's not always the easiest thing either, because when people want to follow you, or you carry that weight of knowing you have influence on people. But I mean, and it's not just nurses, there are lots of, respiratory therapists or PCAs or techs, that have some, really powerful influence on their peers or their
sometimes without realizing
colleagues.
It, probably.
Yeah. The things that they say carry weight, or, when they're saying, oh, there's something wrong with this, or this isn't right, that makes an impact on that unit. So you have, those people who everybody kind of goes to, oh, what are your thoughts about this? Like, oh, they're trying to do X, Y, and Z, is that, and they, they're the person that people, kind of come to, and it doesn't just have to be nurses. As a nurse myself, I know, one of my PCAs who's still here, actually, who, is just fabulous. I look to them as a leader, hey, can you help me with this? Somebody that you can rely on and trust. And so I think that you got to find who those people are for you as a new grad. And sometimes it might be you, because maybe you just carry yourself with a different, level of authority.
I mean, sometimes, like, as a leader, you need to reach out to someone and say, hey, I see leadership in you.
Oh, yeah.
And call their attention to it. Because some people have these abilities and don't realize it. And that's, number one, a confidence booster, right? Because, I mean, inspiring people is huge, and building people up is huge. I mean, I feel like that's a major part of being a leader, is building others up. And then also, like, helping someone realize their potential is amazing.
Mentoring. So, having the opportunity to be able to mentor is huge. I mean, one day you hope to not maybe be in your role.
Right.
One day I'd like to retire.
Oh, yeah. Succession plan.
100, I don't know, 100. I'll retire in that year.
Is your math working?
I don't think so. I think at this point it's like, I'll just, work until the end. But, having somebody, who can come behind you and you can say, when I move on to the next path in life, this is who's going to step into that place. Because you want to set a cheerleader wants to set their group up for success. Whether they're there or not, they are looking to make sure that everybody's going to be successful.
No, I think that's huge. Another thing to me about leadership is being not just a problem pointer outer.
That technical term.
I know. I like someone who's a problem solver. I like someone who, and I'm not saying you have to always come to me with a solution. I know, some people can't. You can be presented with problems, and the solution is not always evident. Right? I mean, things can be really complicated, and so you need other minds to help you see solutions, right? But I like people who are willing to work towards solutions, because there's plenty of people out there in the world who are just like, hey, there's a piece of paper on the floor, and they're not going to pick it up, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of problem pointer outers, and I think leadership takes being a problem solver.
The PPO's problem pointer outer.
Hey, you'll remember it though.
I will. Yeah. So I think absolutely, it is appreciative inquiry.
Yeah. No. Yeah. It is. It's
Look it up if you're not sure what it is.
Yeah.
But no, it's coming with a positive mindset on things,
right.
And you want people to come with a solution and have thought about maybe how we could do things differently. But to your point, maybe you don't know. You just recognize something is wrong, but it's coming with, hey, I saw this and I'm not sure what to do, but I want to help versus,
let's work together.
Versus this is, same crap, different day. Like, this never changes.
Yeah.
Well, that's not going to help anybody. What are you saying? What can we do? Partnering with people, talking to people in a positive manner instead of just, kind of crap talking.
Yeah.
It's, hey, I saw this happening. Like, what do y'all think about it? Not, oh my God, did you see what
I know. Oh, I mean,
what JoJo did today?
Doesn't it feel like there's so much of that, right? Yeah. I mean, just be someone who's, that's definitely something I want to leave with people, is like, be someone who's willing to like come to the table to solve problems, and be one of those change makers, and not just someone who's like, well, this is just how it always is, and I'm just going to accept it, and, I'm just going to complain about it every chance I get. So, yeah. So let's talk about your path into leadership. So, like, talk about, like, pivotal moments, like how your career is really evolved, not involved. Sorry.
So I think that one of the things you kind of mentioned was people, when you see somebody who you think has potential for growth, is saying that to them. And, hey, I think you're doing a really great job. I see you being a very strong leader in this organization one day. So for me, that happened when I was getting my master's degree. The person who was my preceptor for that worked here. She was the director of nursing at the time, and really pushed me to grow, and was the person who, as I was finishing my master's, she actually came, I was on house that day, and she walked in the office and she said, what do you think about this? You're finishing your master's. What are we going to do with that? We have an open manager position. Mm-hmm. And the thing that she said to me is, because the position was on a neuro unit, and I was like, I don't know nothing about the brain. I don't know nothing.
Sometimes in healthcare tend to silo ourselves.
Yeah, I'm like, cardiac, heart. Where's the brain? Can you point that out to me again?
Does it go up?
Where does that go?
Yeah.
So I think that she said, you've learned the skills you need to be a manager. We can teach you the other stuff. And again, it's almost, your point, we think, I only know about this part of the body. We all learned all of the things about the body in nursing school. We all learned the same
came
stuff.
out as a generalist. We all passed the same test.
And then we, were put into the hospital setting, and that's how we kind of, forge our path into certain specialties. But I think we sometimes forget that you can always learn something new.
Well, it takes stepping out of our comfort zone.
Yes, and so
we don't like that
for me,
always.
that was, kind of hard.
Talking to myself, though, too.
Yeah. So, I said yes because I trusted her opinion, and I felt like that she was pointing me down the right path. And so I did say yes, and I moved into that as my first manager role. But was able to learn a lot about neuro and neurosurgery, and meet new people and new physicians and providers, and learn more than I ever wanted to know, probably, about the neuro side of the world. But just expanded your growth, because if you want to move up in leadership in the hospital, you don't really want to silo yourself, because you never know what great opportunity is going to come along. So I think for me, it's always been saying yes to new opportunities, within reasons. Right. You got to have some, self-control and take some self-boundaries. Yeah. But from there, another opportunity, they came and said, hey, we have this manager of the float pool and special projects that we'd like to see if you'd be interested in. And I said, well, if you, trusting the person who's offering these things, if you trust them not to lead you down a bad path, I said, that sounds interesting. That sounds fun. I don't know anything about that.
So you had a leader that you were willing to follow.
Yes. And so when she said, would you want to do this? I'm like, absolutely. And I've heard stories with other people. Like, I have one of the nurses that I work with right now. She had a leader who that worked here that I got to work with, but she followed her to multiple facilities, because you're willing to follow those people who are going to be there for you and are going to have your back. Right. And I think that's you hear that in healthcare. For those people who say, oh, we've worked at 6 different hospitals together, depending on where you work or what you've done. So for me, it's really been about saying yes to opportunities and recognizing that I have the general knowledge that I need, and if you work in a good organization or if you have good mentors, they're going to help you along the way with the other stuff that maybe you don't know. You don't have to be an expert in everything. That's not the expectation, or it shouldn't be the expectation that you know everything. You got to know who your resources are.
So one thing, I want to just reiterate is you had someone who saw potential in you and spoke that into existence, right? So they they discussed it with you. They built your confidence. How important was that conversation? I mean, it sounds like it was. I mean, that sounds like a really pivotal moment, and I want to I want to point that out just because, as leaders, whenever you look at someone and you see something in them, how much can you change that person's life? Completely, change the trajectory of their life, of their career and stuff, just by saying, hey, I see something great in you.
Oh, I mean, I still remember the moment, but
Right.
I can vividly picture where I was sitting and her coming in and saying this to me. So, I mean, absolutely, it had a huge impact on where I'm at now.
Oh, for sure.
And any other time that she called, I can think about other things where they said, you're doing really great. We want to try something else.
Yeah.
I
think that's huge.
Yeah, and I think that it's all about. Actually, got the opportunity to see her. Her husband was a patient here probably a year ago, and I got to thank her because I hadn't gotten the opportunity to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I just want you to know I am where I am right now because of you. Mm-hmm. And I think also telling people, giving them that feedback of saying, thank you. I think for me, it was felt really big. Right. It might not have mattered to her at all. I'm sure that it did.
No, but
it having the opportunity for me to say thank you and to give thanks to the person who really helped push me.
It does, because you think about it. I mean, I do the same thing. People that I've helped grow along the way, to be able to look back and I have this legacy. Even now, I mean, I'm just 15 years into healthcare total, and I have people that I've helped grow along the way, and I've seen them do many things and see them being happy and having successful paths. I mean, that matters a lot to me. And so, I know you have people along the way too.
Yeah.
And so, that matters to her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just think it's important for us as leaders to make sure that we're not afraid to speak up and say, hey, you're doing a great job. I see potential in you, and have these conversations where you try to help steer people in the right direction. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, no. Did you ever have issues with imposter syndrome?
So, being the young person that I am,
yeah.
You're only a few years older than me.
Yeah. She likes to remind me.
Yes, you will hit middle age first.
I will. It doesn't feel like it's gonna be that long either.
When I started in this, we talk a lot about, or there's been a lot of things about, nurses eat their young, and I think that is still relevant today. I think sometimes, there are people who do that, or
we're trying real hard to phase it out.
Yes, we're very much trying to do that because, they're not going to be around forever. And we've lost a lot of people, during COVID and stuff who left the industry, who maybe had been there, the old guard, so to speak. Yeah. So when I started in my leadership journey, I was pretty fresh out of school, and it just so happened that these opportunities have presented themselves. So sometimes I'd be in rooms with people who were, I didn't want to say much older, but just had a lot more experience than I did. And so sometimes it was hard to be like, should I be here? So I didn't, you'll never believe this, I didn't talk a ton in the beginning.
I can't imagine.
Now you can't shut me up. But yeah, it was just I think also just listening and then recognizing, okay, I'm going to not say everything that I think. I'm going to get a full form plan and then tell people what I think or give my opinion then, or I'm going to try something. So when I first became a manager, I had really great patient experience scores and was able to recruit a unit that didn't have that many staff at the time, and, kind of showing what I can do in that way, because data speaks and data drives things. And so being able to show that, I think, kind of helped me, that I could say, because I think you said this earlier, oh, this is the way we've always done it.
That's
my
least favorite.
It is.
Makes me cringe.
I hate that phrase.
Nothing makes
and
me
so people,
like
had been here for decades and decades, and had been in management for decades and decades. And sometimes that isn't always the best, because they maybe don't want to change or aren't as willing to change. And we're coming in with, we've got 5 generations in nursing now. People have to be flexible, and so I think that was kind of hard sometimes to think, well, they've been here for forever, so they know. Well, yeah, they know what we've done for the last 40 years, but Heck, we're using electronic medical records
We
now.
used to smoke at the nurse's station.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So things change.
And now we would swat things out of your hand real quick.
Yes. And so I think that was kind of hard sometimes as being so young, but just I think proving yourself and being able to prove what you can do and showing the data. You can say a lot of stuff. You can say whatever you want, but being able to actually prove it with data, I think helped me in saying, hey, I am here and I am making a difference. And hopefully that's recognized.
Yeah. I mean, everybody was at the table for a reason, and, you kind of have to own your piece of it, but I think being able to prove is really important. So, one of the things we wanted to touch on was like different trajectories outside of the traditional bedside. So we've looked at several things that we wanted to discuss, like nursing education. We have like a whole department for nursing education.
Absolutely.
Informatics is a whole different department.
Those are nurses.
They are nurses.
Didn't know that when I started. Thought it was IT guys.
Well,
Just thought it was
yeah. I mean, it's easy to think that, but there are people who work in informatics who are trying to make technology more nurse friendly, and that's really cool. Quality and risk. We group those together. And they're nurses too. They're people who were, it seems like we have a tendency to make things like profession specific. Like people who are looking at quality and risk from a nursing standpoint are also nurses.
Yeah. Well, you need that nurse viewpoint on things.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, and there's so many jobs that I feel like when you're in nursing school or you have career fairs, you hear nurse in the hospital, nurse in the nursing home, school nurse, and then, your advanced degree, so nurse practitioner, I feel like more so. Or, you could be a professor of nursing. Mm-hmm. Okay, but there's so much more than that, and they don't focus. Not that they need to focus, because I do think you obviously need to get your skills at the bedside, and whatever that is, whether that's, in a nursing facility, in an acute care facility, in a rehab facility. But just when I first heard about some of these jobs, like risk management, I was like, I want to do that. I want to go read medical records because I'm a nerd like that. I like to be like, well, clearly they didn't chart this, or they said this at this time, and it doesn't.
Well, that's a lot like that.
When I heard about those things for the first time. But yeah, I think you just hear things and you think, oh, I'm a nurse, I can't do that. Or that's obviously for someone with this degree or something else. It's like, no, they need nurses. They need that brain, because a lawyer trying to read a chart, it has absolutely no idea what they're looking at.
No.
They need someone who can
just
interpret
like I have no idea what I'm looking at whenever I look at, like, the law. It's, it has
like a contract. I'm like, I'm going to sign this contract. I'm probably sign my life away. I didn't. How many times have you not read a contract that you signed?
Well,
every day. I scroll through. I'm like, scroll through. Yep, that sounds good.
Yeah, accept. Yeah, no, I completely understand. So, I mean, but there's so many people. There's nurses who write policy. Yeah. They write nursing policy, and that's one of the cool things about, one of your things that falls under your umbrella is shared government. Shared governance. Yeah. No, I mean, it's nurses writing policy for nurses. Yeah. Right? Or like, helping to form policy for the hospital. All your support services, I mean, the manager for transport is a nurse, House managers, which we've talked about before.
Best job in the hospital.
It's very unique. I love being house, but sometimes it's a lot too. I mean,
you have the whole hospital on your back.
Yeah, you're hard to find a problem that doesn't fall into the house manager, job description. That's
but
definitely
for nosy people like
more
us,
duties as assigned. Yeah.
It is a good job to have.
Absolutely. Because I get to know everything.
The dirt. But that's something that, I mean, every hospital more than likely has a house manager, a house supervisor. They might call it they might call it something else. Yeah. But again, not something that you really hear about in nursing school.
No.
Or not a job that they don't show that on Grey's Anatomy. They don't show nurses on Grey's Anatomy, really.
Yeah,
so,
you're right.
The doctors are running everything.
Yeah.
Not true.
Which we know that, doctors don't really run hospitals, nurses do.
Yes.
So. Employee health.
Yeah, great people.
Yeah, we have some great people working in employee health. We talked about the legal nurse consulting, medical device jobs.
Yeah, there's so many companies that they try to sell you stuff every day, but most companies have nurses who are doing the education, because who better to educate on products to nurses than nurses?
Oh yeah, one time, and this made me want to do this job. So like one time I was pretty fresh in the ER. We had somebody come working for one of the pharmaceutical companies, but she came to teach us about CroFab. And I'm not making money for CroFab, but that's your rattlesnake or your pit viper antivenom.
I did not know that. I was like, please tell me more. What is CroFab?
This girl knew her stuff, and now I did too, because I was so interested. But like, told us about the sheep that are part of making CroFab, and they get injected, and then they pull their blood out. And these sheep, they survive off. And I'm probably getting this wrong, CroFab people, but I still think your product is really cool and your reps are amazing. So like they feed these sheep. They live off of like mangoes and bananas and pineapple.
So intrigued. I'm gonna have to go do some.
So CroFab is like the next evolution of the latest evolution of antivenom, and so people would have allergic reactions to the previous version, but they don't have the same reactions to CroFab. But if you're allergic to like mangoes and pineapples and bananas, you can have a reaction. And I was like, that's so freaking cool. Anyways, I just remember thinking, I want to do what she does, because I can get that excited about CroFab.
You can. I'm currently now like
Googling it. I know. Now you want to know. So interesting.
But yeah, nurses can do so many things. I'm Stryker. This isn't a plug for Stryker, but I do want to work there one day. I did interview with them, and they have nurses, just this fabulous nurse from Michigan who, they do all the education when you buy new beds or you bring in their mobility equipment. I just think even, and really anybody, I mean, if there's people, who aren't nurses who are, listening in, who are some of your followers.
Yeah.
There's jobs also, some really great like OTs and PTs who also do stuff related to mobility.
Oh,
so
yeah.
there's it's just so interesting what you can.
I hope our respiratory therapists doing the stuff on vents, because nurses don't know as much about vents.
Yeah, or not a lot.
Or BiPAPs or all those things. Yeah, I hope they have respiratory therapists doing that.
They need subject matter experts on those things.
For sure.
Not us.
Because I'm like, what would this button do? Just kidding. I don't do that. Maybe. No, I do have a much better understanding of vents, than probably the average bear. But at the same time, like, these respiratory therapists are who taught me, so yeah, for sure.
Or do this on the daily.
But the big thing is, like, a clinical experience is what has gotten these people into these roles, right? They started out with clinical experience, and it still holds major value even when you move into these non-clinical roles.
Well, it helps you because it's somebody who's been where you're at. When they're trying to teach about something, they can talk about the intricacies of your job, or they know what your job is like, versus somebody who comes in who's never worked at the bedside, never done patient care. We have those people who come in and try to, this device is going to like save you time. And you're like, I don't know if you understand the workflow. Let me walk you through that.
Yeah.
This isn't going to help anybody.
Yeah.
Y'all didn't think about X, Y, and Z. You should have had a nurse at the table, or you should have had somebody clinical at the table for that conversation. Exactly. Absolutely. I think that has become more of mainstream to involve people who've done the job to kind of help.
No, 100%. I mean, we definitely never want someone who's non-nursing making decisions for nursing without some input, right? And same with any profession, right? So one thing I did want to touch on, I talked about travel nursing last episode with Laura Zapham, but like I think travel nursing can lead itself well to leadership whenever you learn from the different processes at different facilities, right? So you get
to see.
I think I touched on this on the last episode, but I think it's really important that you have the ability to see like what's good and what's bad, and you take the good with you and you leave the bad when you go.
Yes, I do think, I do hate right now, I feel like there's a lot of, you say, oh, what kind of nurse do you want to be, later? What do you think your path is? And they're like, I want to be a travel nurse. And it's like,
you're like,
that is a
like
great
everybody
thing.
else.
Yeah, that's a great thing to aspire to be. However, it does take a special person to be a travel nurse. You have to be flexible.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to roll with the punches, because you are getting thrown into all kinds of situations. And if you don't like change, please don't sign up to be a travel nurse.
Well, you also need to be experienced. That's one of the things we talked about.
Yes, you have to have experience.
It's like they say you only need like 6 months to a year of experience to get signed on, but let me tell you, that ain't enough.
Yeah, and also depending on where you're going, really look at the types of hospitals. Where did you come from? Did you work in a, level 1 trauma facility, and now you're going to go to a community hospital where you're going to have no resources? Maybe think about that.
Yeah, because, like, it's great. Yeah, that's a great point. I don't think we actually touched on that, but, like, different types of facilities. But, like, you don't realize, like, when you work at those facilities with all the resources, what it's like to go to a place that doesn't have all the resources.
Yes, and now you are the person managing the vent because there's no respiratory therapist.
Right, because you go to a place and suddenly you realize, oh, I guess respiratory therapy is a luxury item at this facility that we don't have. We don't have any luxuries.
Or, we have a vascular access team. I never put in my own IVs. And you're like, we ain't got that.
Yeah.
You've got to, you're putting them in on patients that probably need central lines.
Or even like a code team. Yeah, I've worked in a lot of places where, like, I worked in the ER, and
you are the code
I'm
team.
the code team.
Yes.
No matter where they are in the hospital, I better get going.
So I think it's just important to kind of recognize there's so many different types of facilities. Mm-hmm. And that might be something good to highlight if people are looking for careers. I mean, just the different types of nursing facilities that there are and what you can learn.
Yeah.
But yeah, travel nursing, you're a travel nurse, so, you've definitely brought some different experience. I do like hearing from people who've worked in different facilities of what's worked. I think your point, take the good, leave the bad. Mm-hmm. Because we don't want to just continue to do the same thing over and over. So, hey, this works somewhere else. Right. Well, maybe it won't work here because we are a different type of facility, but maybe we could try something similar. Right. What will work for us?
Well, there's a lot of different ways to get new ideas.
Yeah.
Like, there's, obviously everybody needs to stay up to date on evidence-based practice, but, like, there are many, many ways to get new ideas, and one of those is by working at different places. One of those is by, there's a million ways, right? So, like, that's just one thing that you can bring to the table. So let's talk about education and certifications, of course, like things that really help you along the way towards leadership. Essentially, we need to try to, like, lay out a path. There's a lot of people coming into nursing who don't really know how to get from A to B. Like, mm-hmm. They have this vision of what they want to do later in life, or sooner. Maybe it could be sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And then, like, not really sure how to get there. So what could help them along the way?
So if you are coming out of school, for nursing, you've got lots of options. We've got, LPNs coming out who... There's certain places where LPNs can work, and then if they want to advance, more than likely they're going to need to get their RN, mm-hmm. whether that's going back to do an ADM program or a BSN program. There's lots of schools now that offer bridge programs. Mm-hmm. We're lucky enough that our facility is partnered with universities, and they do that. So first you want to figure out, like, where you're at, where you're starting from. Mm-hmm. And then to go into leadership, to be a manager, most places you need a bachelor's degree. They haven't gotten to the point, what I have seen, where they're, requiring master's degrees, but most of them do want you to have a bachelor's degree. Mm-hmm. Because I think bachelor's degree programs kind of add some of that extra critical thinking, and there's some of that.
I think a lot of times they do have that, like, management clinical too involved in it.
Yeah, you do get, that's something they've added recently. I've actually taught that for one of the schools here, is like the leadership clinical.
Yeah.
That we didn't have when I was in nursing school. I never did that, but now.
It's been a while.
And then I got to teach it, and I was like, this is cool. I wish they'd had that when I was there.
Yeah.
So, if you want to do management, more than likely a BSN, but then from there, it's really, what programs do you want to do? A master's degree? Do you even want to do a master's in nursing? Because you don't have to have a master's in nursing. There are masters, there's MBAs, business administration, there's MHAs, which is
mm-hmm.
healthcare administration. So looking at, what do you want to focus in? Do you want to be, very focused? Do you want to be more broad? And sometimes there's programs that do dual. So I have a master's in nursing administration. In hindsight, I wish I had done a dual MSN MBA program, just because I do a lot of stuff now with finances. Mm-hmm. And I'm good at math. I can add real well. You probably wouldn't believe that by listening to me talk. But, like, finance is hard. Understanding that, I did not take accounting in college. Like, I don't have any accounting background. And there's a lot of math, a lot of high-level math that I don't quite understand. that would have been helpful. So they're having to, walk
It
me
is
through
complicated.
that. So if you are interested in going up, beyond, I would definitely say look at the MBA programs or the MHAs.
Yeah, consider it for sure.
Now, if you want to go teach and you're like, I really want to be a nursing, not just an instructor, because you can be a clinical instructor without that. Mm-hmm. But if I want to teach in nursing schools, I want to be, the professor, then you are going to look at the, masters of nursing in something. Yeah. Or the DNP, which when I was in school in our area, the DNP was very much more focused around clinical practice and kind of taking the place of the nurse practitioner. And now there's DNP programs more geared toward administration and leadership, which is what I wish would have been available, but there wasn't, anything local, because I probably would have done that.
So now you have something you need to go back and
get. Now I need to go back and get my doctorate.
Gosh.
But there's different things too. It kind of depends on what you're interested in. We have leaders who have, different masters. We have leaders, our quality director, system director of quality actually had her JD, which works because she worked in quality. So she needed to know a lot about legal stuff.
Yeah.
So you don't have to have a master's of science in nursing to advance.
So maybe I should go back and get a law degree. My parents would be thrilled. My parents would be thrilled.
Yeah.
To hear that I wanted to go back to school for something else.
There you go. You're just always in school. Just stay constant learner, lifelong learner.
I'm too stressed as a student, for sure.
But yeah, I think it's also asking people. I've had conversations. People have called me and said, "Hey, I think I want to go back to school. Like, what are your thoughts? Like, let's talk through it." Absolutely. Ask people who have different degrees. Look at what's behind their name. Look at the degrees and say, "What do you think about that? Do you think that would have been helpful to you? Would you have thought something else?" And sometimes there's so many online programs now that you can get basically any master's degree or anything online for the most part, unless you're going to be doing, there's always some practicum component, right. But a lot of places are, trying to meet people where they're at, literally, and will let you do
there are a lot of options. Outside of like doing the nurse practitioner, which requires like a good bit of clinical hours. Necessarily, obviously they need them, but yeah, some of these non-clinical masters you can definitely get online and work with your time schedule. That's something I haven't actually really considered it being important, but you're right, it is. That flexibility can be really important for people in our profession.
Yeah, I did mine while I was still working 3 days a week, and it was very helpful, those 4 days off.
Yes, I work 3 days a week, and it is very helpful, especially getting ready to go into the clinical phase.
Because I just started a certification course, and I was like, I don't want to do this while I'm at home. I've already worked today. I'm like, maybe do it on Saturday. Like, I don't want to do it on Saturday. Yeah. So, definitely do it while you're young.
Oh, yeah. I feel that.
But you can, there are people who go back at all levels. So I think that's the cool thing about nursing is you'll see people advancing their degrees. We have people who come in and are starting into nursing. It's a second career, and they're, they've lived a whole life, and now they want to come back, and maybe they didn't have the opportunity to do this when they were younger for whatever reason, or a different stage of life. And now they're able to pursue that passion. And I think that's amazing.
I really think that's a good point. I was wondering, it just occurred to me, like I went to nursing school with somebody that was like in her 50s.
Yeah.
And I wonder what she's doing now.
I think I feel like there are not that many professions where you can do that. Now, I don't know, maybe I should go look into that. But I don't know a lot of people who have, gone back to school at 50 to become a teacher per se. Maybe they're doing some substitute teaching because there's, a little less required. I don't know, and maybe there are. Tell us if you tell us please reach out.
I'd be curious,
just what other professions are there where you have the opportunity to really, in a short span of time, change your career and try something new.
I would really love to talk to somebody who went back to nursing as a second career later in life to see like their why and kind of how it's going. So if you went back to nursing, after another career, reach out to me because I might want to sit down and talk with you, have you on the show or something.
No,
because that'd be really cool to talk about. So what about like certifications? I mean, I feel like there's a ton to choose from. Alphabet soup, and it's hard to know what's even useful and like.
So, I mean, I think first of all, depending on what your specialty is, if you're in a specialty, kind of look into that. So if you're an ER nurse, ED nurse,
right?
There's the Emergency Nurses Association. They kind of direct
yeah.
you,
right?
AONL. There's also like ANCC, AONL. They're two different organizations. Again, alphabet soup, lots of different acronyms.
I mean, there's a ton of them.
Then you got PPO for the, what was your thing? The problem pointer outers.
Oh yes, yeah.
So you got all these acronyms.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So go to websites and look into that. I would also say work with your leaders, your managers, and say, hey, I'm interested in certification. What would apply to me? Because not everything's you're not gonna be able to take a certification test as soon as you graduate. A lot of these certifications, the majority of them have some kind of hour requirement. You have to have worked 1,000 hours in ED medicine. You have to have worked 1,000 hours in ICU medicine. You're
going to need some time to learn your craft as well. I mean, these are not easy tests.
No.
But you're right. Like, I mean, I had mentors who, they all had their CEN, and so I just knew that was something I was going to do.
Yeah.
Like, because I wanted to be like them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and there's different ones. I mean, there's the ones that are more specific. So anybody who works on an intermediate unit, progressive care, you could do the PCCN, progressive care.
Oh, yeah.
But then if you work in an ortho unit, there's, I think it's OCN, ortho certified nurse. That would make sense. So you could have more than one.
Them.
Now, personally, I don't think you need to have 15. You don't have to, have 7 lines for your name.
Well, yeah.
Pick a couple that are, important to you.
Yeah, I remember this guy whenever I was a young nurse, and he had all of the certifications. And I mean, he probably had a dozen.
Yeah,
and it was like, okay, well, it stops meaning as much whenever it gets excessive.
What is actually going to benefit you? And you'll hear that from people where they've taken a test and then they've moved into a different role and they've let it lapse or let it expire, I should say.
Yeah, I let my EMT.
Yeah, because it's, hey, this isn't something I'm going to keep up with, because there are requirements, or you have to pay. There's a fee associated with it.
Yeah, I used to test every 2 years.
I
got old.
Sometimes you have retesting. And then sometimes there's specific, CEs that you have, continuing education requirements. So sometimes you can't do it because maybe you've moved out of ED. And so you're like, oh, I don't work in the ED. So now I work in, the cardiovascular intensive care. I need to look at a different certification.
Right.
But it's definitely important and definitely shows, it's definitely something that if you, as a professional in nursing, that you should want to achieve. Yeah. We look at physicians, and if you are a physician, you have 90% of the time you've got to be board certified. So you've got to take a certification. Nurse practitioners all have to have a certification. So it's something that as professionals we should want to do to show that we care about the knowledge that we've achieved and showing our specialty.
Mm-hmm. So what about like other like process improvement class? That's the class you're taking, right?
That's what I'm taking right now. Yeah, I'm taking the Lean Six Sigma Green Belt. Yeah. So
I need to do I have my white belt. But
as a leader,
take the next step probably.
I definitely think it's important that you try to grow and learn. A lot of organizations have different process improvement, maybe departments, and there's different things you can do. I know ours has multiple different little mini training, so I would say look into any kind of thing that is free or that your company's going to pay for, or things out in the community. Leadership classes. I've learned a lot from being in leadership classes with people from other sectors. Not everything's transferable, but being a leader is transferable from one to the other. So how do they recognize and engage and recruit staff? How did they, at the end of the day, patients are customers. So how do you improve customer service? There's some great companies and great people that you can learn from for that. I think we forget that sometimes, that the patient is our customer. So
I hear of people talking about reading like books about how Disney does things, or like, there's Studer, all these different, but you're right. I mean, looking at things from a customer perspective, and like how you keep your customers and how you they keep coming back, right?
But I think then there's also, you look at the customer, you as a leader, your customer, I'm learning, this is module 1 of my class, your other customer is your employee as a leader. And so that's why, that's one of the reasons I got into this or why I chose this path. I think, helping the other customer, which is the employee.
Right.
And so what are those companies that are always getting like best company to work for? And, everybody knows that you want to work for this company, even nationally, they're known. Well, what do they do that's so great that makes people, that has a 50-mile long waiting list to get a job, that you have to know somebody who knows somebody to apply? What are they doing that is, it's not just about money, and it's not just about, sometimes it's about other things, like what else can they offer people?
The customer are your patients, but also your staff. And like we as leaders, that's one of the things I'm saying about house manager, and also like as being a part of the rapid response thing for me is like my job is more about the staff, like being supportive to the staff and making sure they have what they need, and then doing some, on the spot education, and also just like being a resource for if they feel like their patient's deteriorating. So I feel like I have less to do with patients now, for sure. So the important things for me as far as like education, certification, maybe is showing initiative, showing that you're wanting to grow yourself. I think that's probably a huge piece, is just showing that you're taking steps to grow yourself. However that may be. I mean, it could be these leadership classes in the community. It could be those certifications. Pick one or two that you feel like are important to you. And then also, I mean, obviously pursuing that next degree shows initiative, right? It could be like simpler things too. Policy is not necessarily a simple thing, but like keeping yourself up to date on your facilities policies and like understanding the why behind your policies. And I'm not just saying like know every single piece of the policy, but knowing how to find out,
just knowing where the policies are.
No, for sure.
Because if Joint Commission walks in, you're not going to know the policies, but you got to know where to find them.
What is the canon's answer? Oh, I don't know, but I'll look it up.
Yeah, I don't know, but let me go find out.
And actually go find out.
Yeah, you can't just run away.
You can't just run away and hide. I tried. It didn't work. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, understanding your resources and things like that. And then just distinguishing yourself at the bedside, I think, is really important. Like we've said multiple times, like that clinical experience is very valuable.
Well, and I think distinguishing yourself, I think you said earlier with the PPOs, the problem pointer outers.
Oh, yeah.
It's also personal protection order. I thought you were going to say PPO. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah. Or
that's EPO, emergency protection order.
No, PPO is like a type of insurance.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Yeah. Preferred provider.
Yeah.
But I think, you said, somebody walks by and says, oh, there's trash on the floor. Being that person who is going above and beyond, who's helping their colleagues, when you see, Joe running around like a chicken with her head cut off, asking her if she needs help because maybe you're good. You've done everything. Reaching out to people when they're struggling, not just sitting down because, oh, I'm done. I've charted. I'm just going to sit here and watch them. I mean, that's just also being a good teammate. But, when you show like you're taking that initiative and that extra step to help people, I think that helps not only distinguish you to your one-up or your leaders, but also to your colleagues. Like they're then going to show, oh, well, they want to help me and support me.
Yes.
If that person moved into a leadership role, I'd be supportive of that.
Right.
Because when you move into leadership, you do, or you should have interviews from multiple people. And one of them is your peers. And one of them is people you'd be leading.
Yeah. I mean, if it's done well, yeah.
Yeah, but if it's done well, you have multiple people, meeting you and vetting you. So showing that you care and you want to help and are willing to do that, I think is hugely important.
100%. I agree. So as a new grad, someone who's like just starting in healthcare or like a new grad nurse, we might say. So what are some ways that you feel like it would be important for them to get involved in leadership?
If your unit has a unit-based council, I think that's an easy way, or unit practice council. It's an easy way to start to learn and grow from other people. And then from there, if they have a shared governance or a nursing congress, whatever they're calling it, that should be open to everybody. So even if you're not a member or a rep, going to that meeting and seeing what happens.
Learning the process. Yeah.
Or when somebody says, hey, we need somebody to sit in on this council or this committee, offering yourself as an option. Hey, we've got a falls reduction committee. We're needing a bedside staff member. Step up. It doesn't normally take that long. It's not normally going to, be that many hours of work. But, then you start to learn, hey, how are decisions made in this organization? And I think that's really valuable to understand.
And other people in the organization are going to see that you're involved. And that networking can be really important too. I mean, we haven't really talked about that. But, getting to know people, introducing yourself, so they know, where you're from, what you're doing, where you're from as far as your unit, and what you're doing and why you wanted to get involved. So.
Well, and that's part of also growing your resource pool, because knowing who your resources are, if you are, making connections with people outside of your own area to know who to call. I used to do that. I'd be like, I don't know what to do with this patient. Let me call the neuro unit and ask about which neurosurgeon's on call, and, being nice to people. A lot of stuff you do in the hospital's on the phone. So always have your good phone voice.
Oh, yeah. I think finding a mentor, finding a person that you can look up to is very important. You mentioned that you had a mentor, and I definitely have had mentors, multiple along the way. And you don't need just one. You usually... your mentors kind of grow as you grow.
Yeah.
And, the number of mentors you have grows, and you can learn a lot from a lot of different people.
Well, you start off and you're new, and you look at the charge nurses that are, you look at your assistant or associate nurse managers, your shift coordinators, then your manager, but those people that are really there with you at the bedside. I think that's really important to see the people that you want to be.
Yeah. I think it is too. Those were my mentors early on, and it definitely helped me to grow. And I still want to be like them when I grow up, because they're still doing amazing things, But and then you had mentioned you had put into our outline, build your leadership toolkit early.
Yeah. So putting down what are those resources, what are those things. Keeping them in your back pocket of, okay, what have I learned along the way? Always writing down, this is what I learned from this person. This is what I learned there. Always leaving people, with a good impression, because you might want to need to call on them at some point. People in healthcare tend to sometimes move, or maybe they're traveling, and we've had lots of different leaders who are from different parts of the state or different parts of the country. And so, keeping those names. So if you have a question, oh, let me, call up so-and-so and just say, what are y'all doing out in California? What are y'all dealing with out, in Pennsylvania? There are a lot of things that are the same across the country, but, nobody's really reinventing the wheel in healthcare, okay? We're all just running along. And so asking, have you seen this? Have you heard of this?
How did this work for you?
Yes. Yeah. When something new's coming. Hey, I heard you guys have this at your facility. What do y'all think about it? Did it work well for you? What's some things I should ask?
Yeah. No, that's a great point. No, for sure. So I wanted to talk about some common misconceptions. I think there are a lot of misconceptions about leadership, especially in healthcare, but probably in general too. So one of the things that we talked about is you don't do anything anymore once you get into leadership.
Not. That's what Luke always says. When's the last time you touched a patient?
Yeah.
Well, what does it matter, Luke?
I mean, he also thinks that I never get up from my chair.
No, but we're always joking, but
yeah.
I mean, I think they think, oh, well, you don't know what it's like because you're not dealing with the patients. I think the misconception there is when you're at the bedside and you have a team, you're in the ICU, you've got, 1-to-1, you got 2 patients you're dealing with that day, maybe 4 if you discharge or both of them downgrade and you bring 2 in. On the floor, you might have 4 or 5, 6 patients, maybe 8 if you're discharging again and readmitting. I have 352 patients because every patient, and that's just the inpatients. Then I have the ED patients that are coming in. I've got the outpatient surgical patients. I've got the procedural patients. All of those patients plus the 1,000 staff members.
I've got patients in this building, in this building, in this building.
All of those people I'm responsible for in some way. Now, maybe not directly responsible for, but something I'm doing is going to be affecting every single one of those people in some way.
100%.
And so I think that's one of the big misconceptions is just because I'm not hands-on with patients, I'm hands-on with staff every day. I'm talking to people, my colleagues, like we're changing policy and practice, and we're trying to fight battles and things behind the scenes that you don't really get to see and maybe don't even understand. And part of that is my role as a leader. You shouldn't have to know what happens. If you want to know, absolutely. I want to be transparent, but you shouldn't have to know what it takes to get you what you need and the things that we have to do if we're a good leader, in my opinion.
Well, that transparency that you mentioned is a huge part of being a leader. I think one of the issues is we want to be as leaders, we want to be as transparent as possible, but we can't share every single thing that's happening. And so sometimes there's that misconception that nothing is happening because they can't see everything.
Yeah, or, oh, you haven't done anything about this problem.
Yes.
Well, maybe it's an HR-related issue. I can't tell you what I've done about Luke and his behavior. Even though you filed multiple complaints.
It's a lost cause.
I can't tell you the things that I've done to try to fix Luke's issues. Hopefully you'll see something for the better, or maybe Luke will work himself out of a job. But...
Never.
But, it's like I can't go and be like, well, Joe, you reported that Luke chews too loud in the break room, and so I talked to him about that, and he's going to try
He actually does chew too loud now that we're
He's going to try to only eat soft foods from now on. I can't come and tell you that because that's, or you don't know that Luke's dealing with, crazy things, in his home life. I can't come and tell you the reason that he's been obnoxious lately.
Well, that's a whole nother thing is we try to be understanding of people's issues outside of work. I mean, everybody fights a battle that we know nothing about.
Yes.
And so that may be something that they've shared with a leader, but you're not going to share with your staff. And so you just say listen, we're going to,
Yeah, I'm working through that. Please let me know if you have any other issues or concerns.
Yeah.
And sometimes that sounds like a canned answer, but that's the only answer I've got.
Well, yeah, but you carry the weight of that person. You're trying to care for them as their leader through a hard time.
Oh, yeah. I think when I moved into management, I would say one of the things I didn't know, I think you asked me this earlier, maybe this is the answer, that I was going to be a therapist.
Oh,
that I was going to need to know how to deal with so many social issues. I am not a case manager. That's one of the jobs we also didn't talk about. I am not a social worker or a case manager. I did not know. Number of times I'd call my mother, who worked in the legal field. She works for the county, multiple county attorneys, and has done lots of different things. I'd be like, so tell me about this. One of my employees is going, I'm trying to offer them help. Now, I can't offer legal advice, but I'd be like, they're concerned about X, Y, and Z, or they're going through a divorce, or the child support, or, I'd be like, somebody help me. I'm 20-some years old. I don't know the answer to this question. I've had issues
before where people have come to me, and I was so grateful that they came to me. They were having an issue, but, I've had employees come to me and be like, listen, I'm being abused at home. I got to figure out what resources I can offer you.
Well, it's so interesting because we deal with these issues with patience, and it's, you should have some form of, a way to, take a step back and be able to not be emotionally involved with your patients. You don't want to do that or you'll burn yourself out. There's a barrier.
Yeah.
When it's your employee, it's you care about them. You see them all the time,
They're a part of your life.
When someone who's your employee comes and says they're dealing with, suicidal ideation or thoughts of harming themselves, I know what to do when it's a patient.
I have taken a nurse, and this was such a challenge for me. I actually took a nurse to an inpatient facility and dropped them off because they needed.
Yeah, it's you know what to do when it's a patient. You have protocols to follow, you have policies to follow. When it is someone coming to you who is an employee, it is, oh, this is different. I don't.
Yes.
They didn't teach me this in my master's program. This wasn't in Manager 101.
Because then you just become a human that cares about another human.
Yes. And it's how do I do this and what do I do to make sure they're okay and can come back.
Well, I think that's another misconception is that, we don't care about people. And let me tell you, we care.
Oh, absolutely.
If you're a good leader, you care about your people. You care to the point where it will worry you to death at home and you can't sleep at night because they have things going on. I completely agree. It's hard.
You have to learn way more how to, compartmentalize things, because otherwise you are 24/7. I think that's the difference and why I like to be a house manager, is because when I'd leave, as long as I'd set the next person up for success, I don't have to think about it. Nobody's going to call me and tell me about whatever problem. Now, when I come in, I'm going to get the tea. You know, you're going to tell me all the craziness that happened.
Yes.
We're going to talk about it.
Report is about staffing numbers, and sometimes report is about something else.
We're going to do some. We're going to spill some tea.
Yes.
But as a manager or as a director or as anybody in leadership, I'm hearing about those things 24/7. I mean, in the job description, it is you have 24/7 accountability of your department or your unit. I always tell my new leaders this, you're the CEO of your department. You have to know everything that's going on.
At all times.
And, you know, you're expected to know. And so that is very hard. People don't get that. Now, does that mean that as an employee, you should call your manager at 3:00 in the morning to ask them if you can be taken off the schedule for the next day? Because
not. The answer is no.
Because you forgot that you have a doctor's appointment? No.
I am not nice at 3:00.
Should you text them, you know, at 5:00 and say, hey, I need you to get back with me right now. I need off in 3 months. No, we need to be professional. But they do have 24/7 accountability of the, you know, the department.
Well, and there's like this weight to being a leader, right? The emotional weight, the ethical weight of being a leader. I mean, because I want to be responsible for these people, my staff.
Yep.
I have to be responsible for my patients. We all know that. But I also, while I'm trying to care for these people and make sure they're successful, I also have to make sure that, the standards of care are being met. Because I'm dually responsible to the patients, to making sure. So, there's this whole other thing, and people don't understand, there is no joy in having to hold people accountable.
No,
right?
it's not fun. Burning people up is nobody's favorite part of their job.
Yes, it's the worst part. It sucks. Having to have these, difficult conversations when somebody's not meeting expectations. I mean, I am, usually profoundly sad if somebody's not meeting expectations. I'm like, what? How did we get here? Why? Why are we not, because it's just what can I do to make you successful, and why are you not? What have I done to make you not successful?
Well, and you have to be able, we use the just culture model. So, was it something that we didn't prepare you? Was it something you didn't know? Or at this point, how many times have we spoken about this and now you're just choosing not to? And I always say, I don't have any children, and people would say, oh, do you have any kids? I say, yeah, I have 150 of them, and they're all over the age of 18 because they're my employees. Because sometimes I'm like, this must be what it feels like to be a parent.
Yeah. Well, yeah, sometimes, I feel like my kid is easy to parent compared to some of these people that compared to being a house manager. Oh my gosh, no.
And I think one of the things that I always strive to do is, this was a leadership, or it was a value of one of our old organizations, and I liked it. So I have it on my office door, but it's assume positive intent. Mm-hmm. So we want to give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm always going to believe when you come to me with an issue that you have good intentions. Now, regardless of what other people are saying, I'm going to get your side of the story, and I'm going to assume that you have positive intent, because you come into it with a positive manner, then you're going into it in a better headspace than thinking, well, this is just something Joe does all the time. Oh, she did this again. Now, we know that
I'm perfect.
Well, obviously self-awareness is something she struggles with, but there's also that idea of, holding people accountable, but I'm going to assume positive intent. But the other quote that I love is, poor planning on your part does not necessitate an emergency on mine.
Very true. Very true.
You are a professional. And when you work in healthcare, I hope that you're the utmost professionals, because you are literally holding people's lives in your hands.
Very true.
And so I hope that you can be a professional and can, think through your actions and recognize what outcome they're going to have on other people.
Right. No, true leaders want to see their people succeed and grow.
Yes.
We want everybody to thrive, and enjoy the job as much as possible, and we want to guide people. I think like we've said, we look back on the people that we've helped grow along the way, and that brings me a lot of joy.
That's why I got into leadership. It was so that I could relieve administrative burden, and if we have happy employees, you're going to have happy staff. That's the it's not happy wife, happy life. It's happy staff, happy patients. It doesn't
Yeah.
rhyme as well.
Yeah. No, it is true. I mean,
I wanted to see people grow, and I want to make that bigger impact. For me, it's all about making an impact on people. And I can make an impact on, my 4 patients for the day, but I can make an impact on more patients if I can help as many staff as possible and make sure they have what they need to do their job.
Yeah. So, advice for aspiring leaders.
Advice for aspiring leaders: be a sponge. Learn all that you can. And there are so many leadership tactics and leadership books, and you can read millions of them, but figure out what philosophy you want to live by. Yeah. Every hospital or every place that you work is going to have some different values and things. Make sure that they match what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. Make sure that when you go to a place and you're going to be in a leadership role, that you their values and their mission and vision really match what yours is, because it's going to be really hard to be a leader if you do not align in that way. And they do not have the same values that you hold.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of these books are, I think for me, from leadership, like I've, definitely read some books about leadership and listened to some podcasts, and even I did some master classes, some of those classes.
Oh, yeah.
This is not a plug for master class, however.
We're not plugging a lot of things.
Yeah, but there's, some great stuff to be gleaned from there. And I think I just take a little bit from each thing, I really want to take this one point and let it, be a part of my philosophy. So,
yeah.
So for new grads or students, did you put your tip here?
Yeah, so my tip would be never stop asking questions.
Yeah.
You can always grow and learn, and people who don't ask questions always scare me.
Oh, yeah.
Because they think they know everything. They get a little overconfident.
We talk about that all the time. Well, that's the flip side. So we say all the time, if you're in a place where you can ask questions, and run.
Yes.
But if you meet somebody who never asks questions, also run. Because they're trying to kill, they may not be trying to, but they're going to kill somebody.
Yes.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, so any, you had a funny story you wanted to share?
I do have a funny story, yes. About, you never know what you're going to get as a leader. So, I was the house manager, and at the time in our organization, we had what we called administrators on call, and they were different people at the director level and above who came from all the different departments. So this particular week, the administrator on call was our director of radiology, which, again, great guy. You need to have those resources when you have a radiology problem, but really doesn't always know the answers to the questions that you're going to ask as a house manager. So I call him up and I said, hey, you're the AOC. I just wanted to make you aware of this situation that we have in case it escalates. There is a cat in the wall. And he's like, excuse me? What am I supposed to do with that? I said, hey, I'm just making you aware. There's a cat in the wall. We're working through it. So what had happened?
I cannot stress enough, how many strange things fall into the lap of the house manager. Okay.
Yeah, when you get that call and they're like, oh, you got to come down here. We got a problem. So what had happened is there was a patient on this particular unit, and this was probably 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They had some friends who wanted to cheer this patient up. This patient and his friends apparently were all unhoused individuals, and so they wanted to bring in a cat to cheer him up. Well, they didn't have a cat. They didn't have a cat, so they found a feral cat outside. Somehow brought it into the hospital in a bag, got it into the room to show their friend to cheer him up, and because it is a feral cat, it does not know these people. It jumped out and somehow found its way into a hole underneath of the radiator HVAC thing. So then
humans are wild.
The cats are
probably. Call the cat feral, but really the human.
Wow. Sure. Okay. So, engineering was able to extract the cat. The cat lived. It got taken outside. The manager of the unit at the time had a very stern talking to with the patient and the friends about do not bring animals that are not your own and that are unvaccinated and don't want to be here into the hospital.
So many poor decisions were made.
But yeah, that's one of those you just can't make this stuff up. I mean,
you really can't. That's.
I mean, got up to 5 floors, like made it up the elevator with this cat. It gets out, finds a hole in the wall, and you know.
I mean, that's a good one. I mean, I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, so later, there was like a couple weeks later, I was in the AOC meeting, and they were like, okay, we're bringing in some new people. What kind of prep do we need to do for this? And the director of radiology was like, well, I'm not really sure because nobody prepped me for this. I was like, well, there's nothing you could do. I just needed to tell you in case we had to.
Know. I mean, you really don't. I mean, like, if somebody's stuck in the elevator, yep, it's my problem. Do I know how to fix the elevator? Nope. You know, if it starts raining from the ceiling, which sometimes happens, guess whose problem it is? Yeah. Also mine. It's
well, there's a storm. I remember you called me once that was like there was like a wind advisory. I mean, the wind was like blowing people over. Not a tornado, but the wind. And I was like, no patients can go. We're going to tell nobody can go outside for like the next 35 minutes.
I remember that.
Because like, people would blow, like you would blow down the street.
Yeah. And there was like dumpsters like flying down the street. And
we're like, okay, no one is permitted to leave the facility.
Was a cow. I saw that, and this cow just flew by.
Yes, from the
14th floor. It was insane. No, just.
I think you're confusing that with an episode of Twister. But...
yeah. No, I like that one.
But no, just the things that you have to, you know.
It's so wild.
You just never know what you're gonna get.
And you do. I mean, like that's one of the things. Like as a house manager, like you kind of have to know what the weather's doing because, I mean, you might have a snowpocalypse, you might have a tornado.
Floods.
You might have a flood. You have no idea what's coming, but
it could all happen in the same week.
It could all happen in the same week. No. Thank you, Dee Cision, for joining us. It's been great. I'm really enjoying it.
Thank you so much for having me. I've waited 16 episodes to be here.
I know. We've talked about it, and now it's finally here. Look forward to her rapid roast. We have a bonus episode that I will release at some point. I'm keeping them in my back pocket for now, so you never know when you might see them. And we'll have you back on at some point. We'll come up with that next thing. Might be Magnet. We never know.
Let's talk about
I don't know.
Absolutely.
We'll see. Yeah. So just a reminder, check out the merch store, codebrewpodcast.myshopify.com. We still have that code BrewCrew10 for 10% off your first order. And find us on social media. You know, interact with us if you have topics you want to hear, and we're just happy to keep going, you know. So, as always, stay caffeinated, stay curious, and we'll see you next time on Code Brew.
Bye, everybody.